Thanks for joining us again. Prior to Christmas every year, we like to do a bit of a refresher on the V5 because people start to pull them out after they might have been in hibernation for 6 or so months or for other reasons that we haven't been able to get out and about. So the V5, wanted to run over what you can and can't do with it because this is the time of year when people will run into trouble, forget how the system works, forget about the loads and the limitations that it might have in respect to draws and charging rates. So the NOMAD V5, you can charge it with an unregulated solar panel, and what that means is you've got a solar panel that does not have a regulator, so it's just a panel on its own. You can directly connect that to the NOMAD, but it cannot exceed 200 watt panel. Not 220, it's 200 or less. 200 or less is going to struggle to put out 10 amp. It might put over just over, and that's what this is rated at. 10 amp maximum rating of the internal MPPT controller. So direct connect that to your solar panel, that works perfectly fine, up to 200 watt. It takes a maximum of up to 25 amp regulated. That's where you plug your AC/DC charger into, and that's where you would plug your regulator if you have a regulated solar panel. So you have a regulated solar panel, you've got a reg on it, and the profile will say 12.6 profile, which is these are fully charged at 12.6. We still a lot of people saying it goes up to 13 and so on and so forth, but there's 4.2 volt per each one of the series, which is 12.6. So 12.6, 12.8 is going to be fully charged. So the profile on the controller on your solar panel needs to give that lithium profile for the NOMAD. So solar panel to regulator, and then goes to the regulated input. The same as if you have a car and you want to connect this up to your vehicle, you must have a DC-DC. The DC-DC must not exceed 25 amp. It's 25 amp or less that goes in here. It's not 25 plus a 1 or 2 amp because that will trip the unit out. It does have overcharge protection and dead short protection, and those instructions how to reset are in the instructions, obviously. So dead short, you just remove the dead short, and then you plug your charger in and then it reboots. If you're doing overcharge, you need to draw out more than 1 amp to get it to reset. But what I will touch on there is you have to be careful, and this is one of the things that people are doing. They're thinking, well, that's great, 25 amp here, 10. No, maximum anytime, 25 amp the unit can take. That's 25 amp. So 25 amp max, if I'm running a 25 amp charge into my regulated charge, I can't charge it with solar. So what you can do though is get something like a DC with a solar input, and you can plug it into there and let the reg do all the work for you. Or you could charge, say, up to, I would say 15 amp max here with the regulated charge, and then you've got a maximum of 10 amp over here because that's total 25. But just realise that if it does touch over 25, it will just basically shut down and won't take charge. You can still run things off it, but until you draw more than 1 amp, it won't reset. And that's just part of the safety feature there. So again, 25 amp max across the unit at any given time is the charge rate. So just think, well, how much am I charging with? Can I put in 10 amp here? Should I put in 10 amp there? One of the great things that I've seen tradies do, I know I harp on about it, but tradies will have a 10 amp DC, Siga DC or an Anderson DC like that, and they'll plug it into their vehicle. They've got a VSR, so when the car's off, it's not charging. They charge it with a 10 amp continually through the regulated charge port, the Anderson, and then they'll have it on the roof of the vehicle a 200 watt solar panel. So they'll leave that connected like that. They'll be running the fridge, they'll be charging their 12 volt cordless drills and bits and pieces all throughout the day, and that works absolutely perfectly. 10 amp while they're driving to the site, they've got 10 amp going in while they're sitting at the site, and they've got 10 amp driving when they go back home again. So that typically runs, you know, their 50 litre fridge and does all their stuff they need to be doing when they're on the site. So just remember, the safest thing would be say, look, put in 10 amp there and put in 10 amp there, and you're not going to have a problem. As soon as you start pushing the limit, and this is where we always have the problems where people say, well, it must be around 30 amp. It's not around 30 amp, it's 25 amp or less. It's not a guesstimation, it's exact numbers. Okay, so 25 amp max at any given time on the input. The maximum output at any given time is 20 amp. So the output over here, you've got an Anderson output, which you can run a couple of wire leads off, that's perfectly fine. Maximum 20 amp. So 20 amp on the screen there, you can actually watch it go up. You know, as you have two fridges running here, which I might do, that might go 13 to 14 amp, that's fine. Once it hits 20 amp, you've got to say, okay, well, that's all I can put in there. So you can have 10 amp running out the Siga sockets, so Siga plug, Anderson, 10 amp max out of each, and then you've got the USB, dual USB over here, the 2.1mm jack. So these ones here, you can plug in they were typically for your CCTV audio or your light strips. You can plug in there, and they're 5 amp rated each, or 10 amp across the two. So 10 amp, 10 amp, 10 amp. Just remember, if you've got 2 of the sticker plugs running at full 10 amp each, you've already reached your max. That's 20 amp. If you want to run an inverter, you've seen our pocket inverters, the 150 watt pocket inverters. They work good for the small, for the small 12 volt chargers. You can plug them in, but don't run anything more than, say, a 300 watt inverter from this. Our maximum output is 20 amp. You can plug the inverter in, and if you're going to run it at max, you still need to watch how much draw is coming out. So you've got the draw screen there, it tells you how much is coming out. Don't exceed 20 amp. If you plugged a 1000 watt inverter in, if you're not using it, it's not going to do anything. You still have a maximum of 20 amp. You might have a 1000 watt inverter, but you still can't run any more than, say, 260 watt. So if you keep it around that, that's probably what you want to look at. So you need to look at the wattage on your accessories that you're going to be using to plug into that inverter. Remember, if you've got a 300 watt inverter, you can't plug a 1000 watt microwave into it. It doesn't work the way. Or you can't plug your hairdryer or your Ninja into it. If it's rated 300 watt, you will burn out the inverter. So that's one of the things to be aware of. You can't just plug an induction oven into these or a coffee machine into these, because they'll draw 2800 watt or 3000 watt for inductions, anywhere around that, which is way exceeding a 20 amp rating. It's around it's around 1000, sort of, I guess, the 1000 mark, which this is not suitable for. So again, never jump start from these units at all, ever. You would have seen our tutorials as a way of getting charge into your crank battery if you need to, and that's by using the DC and treating this as your power source, running it to the DC, and then from that DC running it to your power battery. You do not jump start it, even when it's connected at all. Or you leave it and you can put some charge into it. There's a tutorial specific on that. If you look at our YouTube channel for NomadPDU, our channel, it'll show you how to safely put some power into your crank battery. But you cannot and do not jump start from these ever. And none of our series or our out of our range you should actually be jump starting with. Get yourself a jump pack. They're cheap enough now, 150 bucks, 120 bucks. That will save you a lot of grief, a lot of pain. It'll save you a lot of damage if you start trying to use these to jumpstart vehicles, jumpstart your boat, jumpstart your jet ski. You can't do it, okay, so don't do it. So these guys here, they'll still weigh 11 kilograms. We've got a lot of, you'll see a lot of offers on at the moment with our partners. We do have them out with the partner channel at the moment, available before Christmas. So we'll go into that in a bit of a Christmas, what's available in a moment, another tutorial. But that's just a really brief overview about the do's and don'ts on the Nomad. Again, don't drill into these as well. Don't get them wet. There's dust jackets available for them. So just, try and protect the unit. Can install them this way, sideways, doesn't really matter. But it's more about the draw and how you charge them is where people run into trouble. They try to overcharge these continually, and then they'll shut down. They can be reset, but if you keep on continually doing the wrong thing to the BMS, when these will fail, and what you do is disrupt the balance of the battery pack. We know that's been done, and the typical thing is when people try to charge a really large solar panel, or they'll try and plug a solar panel without a reg into the regulator input. So what I mean is, don't get a solar panel and plug it directly into the reg. Okay, that will damage the unit, no doubt. Okay, if you leave it plugged in, it's going to upset it. You'll see the voltage go right up here, because the voltage from the solar panel can go up to like 24 volt plus, and it'll start showing up on the screen, and you're going to damage the unit. Okay, do not plug a solar panel into the Nomad unless it has a regulator, or if the solar panel is unregulated, which means it does not have a regulator, you must plug it into the red and black poles and let the MPPT inside control it and regulate the power for the Nomad. Again, that's up to 200 watt panel. Nothing more go into here. If you're going to run a solar panel, a big one, make sure it's got a reg. You can put it into the regulated input. Okay, so that's on how to charge the Nomad. And that's really where the problems is that people come into a problem with, is when they start to make up their own way of charging it instead of going back to the instructions. Now, our instructions are on NomadPDU.com.au. You'll be able to go to the V5 and you'll be able to click on the link with instructions. You can download them from there if you don't have them handy. If you don't have them handy and you do want a copy emailed to you, email us at contact@NomadPDU.com.au and then we'll get them emailed to you. I'd rather go to that effort to make sure that you guys have a good Christmas. Don't run into problems when you're out bush, which is always when it's going to happen, and try to avoid having issues. So thanks for joining us. Have a good Christmas, and look for some Christmas specials. We're going to talk about that again.